Hey everyone, welcome to the Modern Government Podcast. In today's episode, Zaizi's Director of Strategy and Innovation, Chad Bond, hosts a conversation on AI in government, alongside special guests Sean Thomas, Chief Data Officer at the Department for Business and Trade, Richard Appiah, Head of Data Strategy for the Borders and Migration Group at the Home Office, and Dr. Ravinder Singh Zandu, Head of Digital and Systems at the Cabinet Office. Together, they cut through the AI hype to explore what it really takes to build AI-ready government data, from tackling legacy systems and data quality challenges to creating the foundations needed for responsible, scalable AI adoption across the public sector. So if you're passionate about AI adoption, digital transformation, or modernizing legacy systems, this is an episode you don't want to miss. You are now listening to the Modern Government Podcast. We start with Chad Bond at Zaizi, where he sets the stage by addressing the massive hype around AI in government. He explains that while everyone wants a magic wand to solve their problems, the reality is much more about getting the basic foundations right first.
My name is Chad Bond. I'm the Director of Strategy and Innovation at Zaizi. Zaizi is an engineering organisation that's been working for the last 20 years in borders and national security. And like everyone has been alluding to on this call, we've had to work with those in government to understand the realities of artificial intelligence. We've had, I would say, more than moderate success in the borders work with the ScanUp product, which has been recognised internationally for innovation awards, and even picked the UAE from the top of that particular award, which we're particularly proud about. Enough from me. I was also a previous senior civil servant. You can tell from my hairline when I started the civil service, it was the other way round, which talks to the fun I had whilst I was in the civil service. Now, the conversation we had before covered a wide range of topics. I'm just going to read through a list I have here to give those that are joining this webinar a flavour of what we discussed that maybe couldn't catch the event in person. First and foremost was the urgency of addressing legacy systems and the significant investment needed. I made a call from the previous spending reviews about the huge amount of investment that's been ring-fenced, but still much more needed to do to realise that the importance, and this will be a core part of the conversation, of getting the foundational data, the people and the culture correct in order to actually do that. And also the concept of data expanding beyond, I think, traditional numbers. And this is one of Sean's amazing points, because data includes more things than just pieces of information that we need to be cognizant of going forwards. And the prospect there is more about how do we avert the legacy of the future by making such considerations. Ravinder has many magic wands, but one of the ones he testifies to quite regularly is AI isn't a magic wand. And it obviously amplifies whatever you've been working on already and how you make sure that's correct in the first place.
Sean Thomas at Department for Business and Trade picks up on that point. She's been in the civil service longer than almost anyone else on the panel, and she's seen trends come and go. She argues that if we want AI to actually work, we have to stop chasing the hype and start focusing on the boring stuff, like quantifying benefits and managing information properly.
I think that information management thing, we've talked about data management and assessments of data quality for a very long time. In fact, I'm sure that lots of us have been through many times looking at the quality and the data processes in our organisations. It's much less often that we've done that for information management. And I think that the move to LLMs in particular, so a particular flavour of AI, the one that is being widely hyped at the moment, it's really, really necessary, because if you've got 100 drafts of a thing that never got anywhere, but only 10 drafts of the thing that finally made it into the policy document, you're waiting everything against yourself from getting good summaries and good documents. So I do think that there's a lot of work to do, probably not just in government, but more generally in making sure that information management is really a thing that we prioritise in a way that perhaps it got forgotten in the gap between turning our paper files into digital systems. I'm sure that I'm the only one that remembers paper files. The other thing that for me is really important is the continuing need to quantify the benefit or not, as the case may be. So I've got a small evaluation team. I probably did mention them. The work that they're doing is really central to being able to decide how to invest in this new technology. And I think without having evaluation of what we're doing, it's going to be really, really hard to unpick what is hype and what is real, and whether we are actually taking government and the world into a better place through using these AI systems. So I mean, a lot of it is still hard and boring work, and it is really important to do it, because if you don't, then you don't get the opportunity to do the fun, exciting stuff. So I don't think I've got an answer that's going to make everybody really happy that they don't need to do this stuff anymore, because it is really important. But do take those opportunities. So we've done quite a lot of work in recent weeks and months, and you can see it in our blog series, the trade.gov blog, where you can see that we've built some infrastructure that was right in the early days of when everybody was talking about LLMs, and we did it through a bit of a circuitous route. Actually, we started our work looking at governance, because it was really hard to know where to put your bet, because there was so much going on. It was all happening so fast. What's the safest thing to do for government to spend its money on in that context? Well, it certainly is to make sure that when you're ready to do this, you've got the governance in place to do it. So my advice in that context is start with the things that you're always going to need, because if you're always going to need them, they're going to be a good investment, and you really don't want to be trying to retrofit them after the fact. So and then when you get to the point that you are actually using things, yeah, you need to keep all of your record keeping and your metadata and all of the use cases written up. You need your documentation to be really good. And we have found that telling the stories is probably the best way of doing that, because you actually get a tangible benefit from it too. So as you make your progress, you tell the next phase of your story. That gives you an artifact that brings people with you. But it does mean that you can continue to justify the investment, and then you get to a point where actually you start to see the return on that investment. So we've just developed a new approach where we've got an AI lab, and it's working really well, not because we're really clever and special, but because back in the early days, we put the investment into the infrastructure and the metadata and the governance, and now we're starting to see some of the benefits of that. We're working on a correspondence tool at the moment, and we're just rolling it out into private beta, hoping that 40 people in the department will be able to use it in the next few weeks. And we've been working on it for 6 weeks? It's the 2 years before the 6 weeks that mean we've been able to do that though, right? If we hadn't done that underpinning work, it would have been impossible.
So how do you actually start that 2-year journey? Richard Appiah at the Home Office shares his blueprint. He discusses the data maturity model, a way of creating an evidential baseline so that leadership can see exactly why the foundations need investment.
Happy to talk a bit about what we're doing around data maturity. And it's interesting, there's a saying that, if you don't know better, you can't do better. Knowledge is key. And I think for me, it goes back down to looking at the foundations, the data foundations. And key to understanding data foundations is understanding your as-is position. So what's the current picture? What's our data maturity? And I think it's worth taking time to definitely invest in understanding and getting almost what's the knowledge, where are we as an organization in terms of our maturity. And obviously in government, we're often large, complex, multidisciplinary teams. And it's important to understand that, different units, different teams, different areas might have different levels of maturity. So one of the key things that we've been doing is how do we tailor and make sure that we understand the maturity in different areas to make sure ultimately we can provide them with the right support, ultimately to support the government's outcomes and objectives. And it's quite interesting is that when you look at kind of maturity, it is about how then do you make sure that actually, okay, we need to understand what is the current assets position, but then actually to move on or almost to kind of shift the dial is we need to get that kind of senior buy-in. So I know we've been talking a bit about kind of funding, kind of buy-in, data storytelling. I think one of the key things that we've been doing at the moment is, first of all, trying to understand the maturity across the organization. And then after that, actually, where do you want to get to? And then actually having those conversations with our senior leaders to say, actually, to get to the 2B position, there's some things that we are going to do incrementally and quite slowly, but these are the things that we're going to do. These are the efficiencies that we're going to make, and this is how it's going to help support kind of big strategic decision making. So there's lots of work that we've been doing at the moment to understand our maturity across the organization. So where I kind of work in the home office now, it's a huge department, and there's lots of trade-offs. So we can do certain things in one part of the organization. If we're not aware of the other side, it can have implications. So it's about understanding actually the broader system picture. We've got some clear objectives that we need to meet to kind of support our common objectives, but understand that picture and really having a really good kind of system plan. But to have that system plan to improve data, you need to understand where you're starting from to know where you're going. And we've invested heavily. So one of the key lessons that we've learned is actually, let's spend a bit of time and really understand where we are and where the gaps are. So when we want to talk about in the future AI building, actually we understand what the baseline is. So I think that is something that we've really focused on. And it kind of links in terms of actually bringing people along the journey with us. So our data communities, for example, is very much about actually how do we get colleagues of all disciplines around the table quite regularly to boost their literacy, to talk about why things are so important and help build their literacy over time as well. And that hopefully kind of increase our maturity. But we've been doing things using kind of various frameworks to understand our maturity across the organization. And then it gives us almost like an evidential baseline that we can kind of test with our senior colleagues to say, actually, this is where we are in the organization. You can compare it to elsewhere and kind of where we want to be. And we can compare some clear milestones and clear plans to kind of move the shit down. So I think conducting data maturity assessments, kind of understanding actually what are the quick wins that can give us the biggest bang for buck and really support and drive some of the outcomes is what we've been kind of focusing on. And then long term, actually, what do we do? So I think it's been a really useful exercise, and I'll definitely recommend doing it. You definitely benefited from doing it. And we're still on that journey. So we're nowhere near finished. We're still on that journey, but it's definitely identified some areas in terms of what we need to focus on, whether that's like data quality improvements, for example, where it's still roles and responsibilities, or whether it's just in terms of kind of literacy. But all of that is underpinned by having that good story that I think is so important to be able to articulate actually why we need to invest now to kind of support kind of the kind of long-term outcomes.
One of the biggest headaches in government is legacy, which is creaking systems that are hard to change. Dr. Ravinder Singh Zandu from the Cabinet Office has a simple solution for this. Instead of building massive new systems, he wants to use an AI as a service model. It's about building small, flexible pieces that can be swapped out easily so we don't get stuck with old tech all over again in 5 years.
Coming to how you can improve upon AI being used, that we can have a kind of a phased migration from legacy system to the new modern system, whatever technology. Can we go into kind of from like we have earlier, software as a service model, platform as a service model? Can we have AI as a service model? That what I mean by that is building AI capability. We should not build AI capabilities from scratch. Everyone should not be doing that. If there are modules, there is standardization. And if we have that kind of standard practice, that these modules can be used for this. We can choose which modules I need, and then I can use it, AI as a service. And that will seemingly integrate with the legacy systems, or that when we can, whether via APIs or other technologies, or how you want to integrate. And that will improve upon the value addition from new technologies, taking along the legacy technologies, which will help in the phased migration. That yes, okay, this is the 10 things which I need to do, and what I can do now is, okay, these are the things which I can segregate and use 1, 2, 3, 4 things, similar to cloud platform as a service or the cloud as a service or software as a service module. That will enhance the use of emerging technologies as well as give value to the services, solutions which people are trying to move away from legacy to the modernization, modern systems.
Yeah, so I think that's really inspired me, Ravinder. I was in a meeting yesterday and one of my team said what we really need to do is get the basics right and then we can sprinkle it with the AI magic. And I think that's really what we're talking about, right? I think the other thing is though, agentic AI is starting to give us opportunities to use some of the technology to help make those improvements on the legacy tech. So I'm feeling like we're at the cusp of a juncture where actually you get the benefit at the end, but you might actually be able to start sprinkling that benefit in the middle too, which also is a real advantage when you're thinking about legacy tech. I'm really lucky. I'm speaking about this like I know about it. I don't at all, because mostly my department doesn't have much legacy by being new. But nonetheless, I do think that if you don't think about what you've got now as the future legacy, you dig yourself into a hole where you're going to not be able to get rid of that legacy in the future.
This brings us to a really interesting debate about trust. Sian Thomas makes a provocative point. We actually hold AI to a much higher standard than we hold ourselves. She explains that while we worry about AI being biased or making mistakes, we rarely go back and check if the human-made policies we've used for decades are actually any better. This is where the guests discuss the struggle of keeping a human in the loop when the tech moves faster than we do.
There's also the question about how we consider this in relation to how we make judgments at the moment where we're not using AI systems. Okay, so we've recently built a summarizer on a new website that we launched a few months ago, business.gov.uk, and it summarizes funding opportunities for businesses. It launched earlier this week, and the testing that we went through to make sure that the AI was working was much more rigorous than anything we might ever have done on a website that was designed by humans. Because we were using AI, we knew that this was going to be a question, and so we went really all out to make sure that we had tested it thoroughly. So I think we need to just bear in mind that we're holding the AI perhaps to standards that we don't hold humans to. And that might be the right thing to do, but we just need to realise that that's what we're doing, because we don't go back and check that in every policy decision there wasn't any bias when we're asking humans to do it. But we are talking about doing exactly that when we're looking at AI. So yes, there is the potential for improvement, but there's also the potential for improving where we aren't relying on AI to make decisions and in systems and processes. So I think it's a really, really interesting discussion point and a really interesting topic. I wonder if maybe at the moment there's a little bit too much scrutiny. Not that I agree with bias in data, in decision making, and I think we definitely need to be doing the testing, but I think we need to be also doing the same thing with where we're not using AI in systems.
Yeah, just to build on that, as you said, that we are scrutinizing AI systems more than the human if they do the policy. I think what we rely on, or we have that confidence in that experience of that person, that this person has 20 years of experience in writing the policy, so it would be right. I think that's where the time or the learning, as I said, or training of the model, that's where we are still don't have that confidence in AI system, and that's why they are more scrutinized. And it's the right way to probably do that, because once they have been tested and time proven, then we can rely on, yes, this system has same experience as the person who has a 20 years of experience writing policy. So I think that we have to reach that stage, and we are at that cusp for transition slowly into that area, so that we can rely on the systems. And still we are relying on that human in the loop, as we say, and so that the system does not hallucinate and give the wrong data. And we should be confident, and people can believe on that.
Can I come back on the human in the loop? Because this is very interesting, isn't it? So the human in the loop works until you get to agentic. And then all of a sudden, how do you keep the human in the loop when, in order to have enough humans to be in every loop, it just doesn't work? So I think there's a lot of work that we need to do on what is the appropriate level of human oversight for some of the things that we're just starting to think about whether we might use. And yeah, this has got to be an area where we make a lot of investment, because if you get it wrong, it can have a big impact. Equally, it can be really powerful if we get it right.
To wrap things up, we look at how to actually move forward. It turns out they all want the same thing: for the government to stop working in silos. They're tired of every department building the exact same tools from scratch. They want a future where if one team builds something great, every other department can just use it too.
If we were having a retrospective, what would be your wish for you to say you've done and ticked off?
The one thing I'll say with ticked off is that continuing engagement with colleagues around the kind of just the data story. I think is absolutely key. Times where kind of money is always tight, you've got to make sure that we're showing the benefits. So it's about actually bringing people along a journey, saying that we're all part of the solution here. And in terms of AI is the future, but it's still built on strong foundations. So it's actually, how do we make sure that we need to kind of invest now, spend the time now, get the foundations right, and long term we'll kind of see the kind of benefits to kind of produce kind of more efficiencies to kind of support what we're all trying to achieve in terms of key government outcomes.
I'd really like for another department to come and take something that we've done and reuse it for that department. Or equally, for me to take something from another department and reuse it, because I think that's where we need to get to. There's a lot of creativity and innovation. Let's leverage that for the good of everybody, not have silos where everybody's making it themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Departments shouldn't compete, they should share. And Ravinder?
Yes, I think I agree with both Richard and Sean. And my final thoughts are that if we can move up to that point that we have the right data available, the data assets, and can we go into, whether it is possible or not, AI as a service model going forward, then it would be a great opportunity for the departments. Then that reuse, which Sean is saying, reuse of systems across departments, it will become easier. I think my thoughts would be to have AI as a service module going forward.
I think Treasury heard it here first. Ravinder's making a strong play for AI as a service. So hopefully that'll be something the rest of the government can benefit from in due course. For everyone that's joined, I want to say thank you for joining and wishing everyone a very amazing, happy day. Thank you so much.
Thanks everyone for listening. Please share this podcast and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you on the next episode.